I'd like to call the April 11th, 2022 Board of Commissioners work session to order. And tonight, as always, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, we have the privilege of having someone who just became a citizen very recently lead us in the pledge. Uli, please join us.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Megan, can you do the roll call?
President Hall,
Here.
Vice President Carter, noted as absent. Commissioner McNaney, Commissioner Similaro, noted as absent. Commissioner Damsker,
Here.
Sandra Zadell, Township Manager,
I'm here.
and Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager, I'm here. Lauren Gallagher, Township Solicitor,
Here.
Owen Hine, Township Engineer,
Here.
David Duffy, Chief of Police, Nathan Crittenden, Finance Director, Evan Reeker, Zoning Officer, Sarah Priebus, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Is that everybody? Great, wonderful. Next up, we have a presentation from Dr. Jayraj and Mr. Whitehair on the legacy of Dr. Frank Boston. Welcome. We're so happy to have you this evening. If you'd like to come up to the podium or however you feel comfortable and share your presentation. Okay, great. Thank you.
And thank you for having us here. We're going to try to keep it short and brief because I did see the list of the agenda tonight. So, and I know the people here are waiting, but we started this project about probably a year and a half ago during the pandemic. And Dr. Jayraj had been one of the chief of staff at the hospital. And he directed me to a monument at 7th and Broad Street. And if I've driven past it, I can't tell you how many times I did not realize it was to an African-American doctor who founded the hospital and the VMSC. So I started my research on Dr. Boston, and what we discovered just became this really almost incredible, awesome story. Just to focus on some of the accomplishments of Dr. Boston, we believe he's the first African-American doctor to start an ambulance corps in the United States.
Wow.
He's the first African-American doctor to start both a hospital and an ambulance corps in the United States. There were other hospitals, but not someone founding both. His brother, University of Pennsylvania, sent me a photo of Samuel Boston, who graduated from Penn in 1898 as an African-American doctor, one of the first doctors out of Penn. So we have the two Boston brothers as doctors the turn of the last century, which again puts them in that kind of first crowd. And they grew up in Philadelphia. Their father was a janitor and then became a barber. Their mother was a hairdresser. Now, I grew up in Philly, and they grew up down near the Art Museum. When we checked into the family tree, we can trace the Bostons all the way to the Revolutionary War. 1760, we have a Samuel Boston in Philadelphia. The father served in the Civil War as a bugler with the Pennsylvania 12th, which was commanded by Marcus Reno, who stayed in the Army. And if people know the story, he served with General Custer out in Little Bighorn, and that was Marcus Reno, was the commanding officer of the Pennsylvania 12th during the Civil War. The father was able to serve with the White Regiment because he was a bugler. They didn't allow what they, back then they would call them Negro troops. They did not allow them to serve with the whites. But the father volunteered, and of course the Army accepted the soldiers. There's 8,600 African Americans served in Pennsylvania during the Civil War. When World War I broke out, both Boston brothers enlisted, but just like the Civil War, the White Army didn't really want them. So they were sent to a fort out in Iowa called Fort Des Moines, where they trained. They became part of the 92nd, which was the Buffalo Soldiers. So the 92nd Division started after the Civil War. They were referred to as the Buffalo Soldiers. Boston served in France during World War I, came back, settled in Philly, and it was during a fishing trip on the Perkiomen that he met a man named Clarence Kratz. Kratz convinced him to come to Lansdale because he had broken his leg and Boston tended to him. Why that story became unique, Kratz had one daughter, Althea, what would become another local hero that we haven't researched yet. Althea became the first female dean at the University of Pennsylvania. She became the president of the AAWU and led the integration of that organization. And I have asked Penn for as many records as we could get, because the only daughter of Clarence Kratz, who became one of Boston's closest friends, goes on to integrate an organization. There's got to be a connection. But we obviously are focusing on Boston, but Althea is another story waiting to be told. Boston then created the ambulance corps. And on May 20th, we're doing a big event down in Washington, D.C. this year, honoring for an EMS week, Dr. Boston at the World War I Memorial. And today I'm happy to report the World War I Commission published my article on Dr. Boston about our upcoming event on May 20th. We're going national. The whole goal is to get the White House to recognize Boston. And very briefly, I could spend the next 3 hours telling you all Boston stories. He's got a lot of awards during his lifetime. 1960 came along, and why I always tell everybody, take the time to go look at that monument, because I'll tell you a little story about it. He started the Elm Terrace Hospital. There's a church there now at 7th and Broad. It moved across the street and was called the North Penn. It's now the Elm Terrace Gardens. When Boston died, the hospital refused to hang his portrait. And the reasoning was, if we do it for you, we have to do it for everybody. His supporters got so pissed off that they raised money, they built that monument. And why I always encourage people, take the time and go look at it. In the middle of the monument is a bronze face of Boston, but it's angled. And they built it that way, so every time the trustees came out of the other hospital, Boston giving them the eye. What's also remarkable about that monument, a history professor from Del Val, who did his doctoral dissertation on African-American studies, he told me that's the first monument to an individual Black in Pennsylvania. And it's one of the few in the whole country. And when I researched it, Philadelphia, that has something like 1,800 monuments, didn't have their first to an individual Black till 2017. And it's at City Hall Toccato, C-A-T-O. Some people pronounce it different. So we may have a monument right here in our backyard that is historic in itself. Boston received two U.S. presidential citations during his lifetime, Truman and Eisenhower. So we're going to D.C. trying to get the third. And we're trying to get Michelle Obama to hold up, and then I'm going to let the doc talk, but I have to at least share this. To get history retold. And we're simply saying recognize a man for what he did. He was a great man, a veteran. I'm with the International Spring Festival. And by the way, that's on the 23rd at North Penn High School, in case you didn't know. One of the fellas I knew through the festival is Vietnamese. And I'm always nice, and I'm a talkative guy. I talk to everybody. I knew him as an artist. Because you meet people and you work with people and you just know a little bit about it. When I talked about the Boston story, he said, why don't I create a comic for you? And I'm like, comic? I go home, I tell my son, and I tell my son his name. My son knew him. He said, Dad, do you know Marvel has its own page dedicated to this guy? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. So I immediately called him on the phone. Remember that suggestion? Well, we created, and I'll show it all to you, we created a Doc Boston Adventures comic. Now, he did put my name and his wife's name because his wife helped write the story. It was based on a story I gave them when Boston and the VMSC went up and saved lives during the 1936 floods. We updated it, so the kids helping Boston are a group of young kids from different backgrounds. So we try to get as many different groups involved as helpers to Boston. And we just came out with this, and we're probably going to do a second because it's gotten a lot of interest and support. We're trying to raise donations to give them out to kids. New type of hero. So there are so many other things we're doing. Uli over here, that young lady that you heard, did become a U.S. citizen on the day we were presenting this story at the Union League. So she really got treated nicely because we happened to be at the Union League. They found out she became a U.S. citizen. And of course, she was really toasted. And what a great way to become a citizen in this country, where she's been a remarkable help to me. She's fluent in 7 languages, including Korean. And where that has helped the Asian community, when you see a young woman of color that is so fluent in so many languages, and I don't want to embarrass her, but Penn State in their alumni magazine ran a article on her work on Boston. So we're certainly hitting all the right notes. But again, I don't want to talk all night. I saw that thing. I just wanted to give you all a little glimpse of what we're doing. And it all started with this man. And most people know him. He is the modern Dr. Boston. And if I did a separate comic, I would be a Dr. J. Raj Adventures, because he certainly is that well-known, that respected in this community. And it's really been my pleasure to work with him. And this is really our core team, Uli, myself, and the doc. So with that, I'll give it to the doc. Thank you for letting me present this. Doc?
George, you did an awesome job, I must say. Again, commissioners, thank you very much, for inviting us and giving this opportunity that is so much needed. And again, George, as you can see, has done an awesome job. Just a couple of things I just wanted to mention, just for your information, as far as the progress that George has brought to light. The hospital, Lansdale Hospital, as you know, the doctor founded the hospital in 1934. He passed away in 1960. However, like George said, he was never given the due recognition. But on May 2nd, Lansdale Hospital, Jefferson Lansdale Hospital, for the first time, they're actually going to put up a portrait of Dr. Boston in their lobby, and they're going to name the lobby after this great doctor. Also, the state is working on naming Broad Street all the way across, again in memory of Dr. Boston. It will be called Dr. Frank Erdman Boston Memorial Highway. And the Senate has already passed. It is being worked out in the House. George, am I right?
Yes.
So again, I'd like to thank the commissioners very much for giving us the opportunity to present. And I'm not quite sure whether anybody has any questions. I'm not sure whether it's within my rights to ask that. I have to ask the commissioners for that permission.
You can have that permission. Does anyone have any questions for either gentleman?
I guess George is.
I think we answered them all.
You did such a great story, there are no questions.
You were so thorough.
I do thank all of you for sitting here. I know a lot on the agenda, and I do thank you all for giving us this few minutes to share this story. The EMS week, I will say again, it's VMSC's going, Bucks County is sending some people, Montgomery County, we have the deputy chief of the Washington, D.C. Fire Department going to lead it. So that's really going to be a great thing. Public's invited. Thank you for posting that up there for us. And again, the International Spring Festival, the 23rd. So with that, again, thank you.
Thank you
Oh,
very
gentlemen, sorry, I have one. We have Unity for Kindness Day coming up on, I don't want to get the date wrong, April 30th.
April 30th.
Have you been contacted about that?
Yes,
Yes, so
yes,
you'll be making this
yes.
wonderful, a similar speech on that event, which is also an international food truck festival. So just since we have so many people in the room, I hope everyone can join us. And Dr. Jayraj, I'm very excited to meet you. You took care of my favorite North Penn resident, Will Zadell, my husband, as a child, and he wanted me to say hi.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Well, again, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Next up, we have another exciting presentation. This one is from Chris Stanford of Michael Baker International. He is going to give us the latest updates on the Liberty Bell Trail.
Tough act to follow, right?
Yeah, really. Definitely a tough act to follow. Well, thank you very much for having me. Again, Chris Stanford with Michael Baker. We've been working with the township and 7 other municipalities in Upper Montgomery County on the Liberty Bell Trail feasibility study. This is an update of a 2005 study trying to plan out a new walking and biking trail through this portion of the county. If you go to the next slide, and again, here's a map that sort of just shows you where we're looking at in the world. Basically, between here and Telford is the section that we're looking. Just generally, there used to be an old trolley line that was called the Liberty Bell Trolley in this corridor. We kind of took a fresh look at it. As everyone probably knows, the trolley alignment has really been separated, cut up, and developed over the years, and it really is not feasible to try to redo that alignment. So we basically took a fresh look, and we tried to reinvent what the Liberty Bell Trail could be in this area. Next. So just for the scope of what we were trying to accomplish, we did a lot of data collection, looking at base mapping, existing plans. We tried to come up with new alignments for where this trail could be located, looking at all the constraints, environmental resources out there, destinations, parks, all the places that people would like to go to as part of a walking and biking network. And then we had a pretty robust public outreach program. We actually had a meeting in this room back in October. We had a really good turnout. I think we had 60 or 70 people that came out in the midst of the pandemic. And so that was really good to see. We had two other outreach events in different parts of the corridor, one in Hatfield and one up in Souderton. And then we had some online, obviously, ways folks could reach out to us as well to share their thoughts about the project. All this was wrapped into a big report, recommendations on how we could move this forward. Next.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to add that you were also at our Fall Fest, you were at Hatfield's Rocktoberfest,
Right.
and one other event, which I'm flaking on, but so there was a,
Franconia,
Franconia,
yeah.
yes, thank you. There was a really significant public outreach.
Yeah, we're trying to reach people where they would go, where those
Yeah.
people would be. This was kind of a unique event when 60 people came out for a night meeting. Other places that don't come out that much anymore. Everyone wants to, do online or go to a festival and give us their input. So what I'd like to do is just sort of focus on Upper Gwynedd, the things that we looked into, and then the recommendation that we're hoping to move forward in the future here. All right, so starting at the bottom right is where we are tonight in Parkside Place. That was kind of the southern terminus of the project area. Obviously a huge destination for the community. Some existing trails already came in. The Green Ribbon Trail already comes into the park and some other local trails. So it seemed like a logical place for the start of the trail network. You'll see some dotted lines on there. We looked at different possible locations for the trail, working with a steering committee and all the municipalities and input from the community. Two kind of alignments came to the top of the heap here. The first being, improvements in Parkside Place. There's a lot of trails in the park, but there's also some sidewalks that could be improved, widened, that could accommodate walking and bicycling. So we're hoping to, basically connect the existing trails out on the south end of the park through the park out to Sumney Town, do some intersection improvements, and then go over to the north side of Sumney Town, come down Sumney Town basically by taking the sidewalk and widening it or replacing it with a full 8 to 10 foot wide shared use path for walking and bicycling. And then we were looking at two different options. One was the Pico right-of-way, electric right-of-way, and the other was Dickerson Road. As you may know, Pico's been a little bit resistant lately. They've been changing their policy regarding trails in their right-of-way. There's still a glimmer of hope for that to happen. We're actually having a meeting in a few weeks to talk to them about that. But at the time, all the feedback we're kind of getting was that Pico would not be the easiest way to go. So we were looking at Church Road and then Dickerson Road. Dickerson Road, it seemed like there'd be less driveways to deal with, less conflicts with a potential trail. So that's what we were recommending, potential trail alignment. We also have the existing Dodworth Run Preserve that we really wanted to connect to as a destination and a way to connect folks to that natural area as well. And then the other parts of the alignment would be coming up Wissahickon Avenue. As you know, there's some green space along that alignment that could be really utilized for the walking and biking network. Crossing over Church Road, and then looking at using Pembroke Parkway to get over to Stony Creek Park. As many of you know, Lansdale already has done a lot of work on the Liberty Bell Trail in their community, and they've actually built out right to the edge, virtually to Pembroke Parkway. So that's kind of our destination point within the township for the Liberty Bell Trail. This would be about a 2.3-mile network that we're hoping to plan out and build in the future, and it would be 100% off-road. That was one of the things that the sponsors of the project want is, try to make it as safe and as usable for all users as possible. So we're looking to get something that's 100% off-road that meets circuit trail standards, which is that 8 to 10 foot wide separated path from the roadways. Next. So everyone always wonders, how much is something like this going to cost? We've done some preliminary estimates, and we're thinking to be about $3.2 million. That includes design costs. The one thing, and again, all the construction costs and inspection does not include our right-of-way acquisition. That's kind of a next step that would have to be looked into. Some more research to be done on what kind of easements and right-of-way would need to be potentially acquired to do the trail. We kind of came up with some ideas of how we could actually move this forward. So what we like to do is try to break these into more manageable pieces. So we thought we could basically take that 2.3-mile section and maybe break it into two pieces. We could do a nice project from Parkside Place all the way up to Dodsworth Run. That would be a nice section with two good anchor points on it. Would also be really good for grant writing opportunities because it would have two recreational amenities that would be tied into it. And then the second piece would be very similar. We have Dodsworth Run all the way up to Stony Creek Park. So again, we're connecting folks to these recreational amenities already in the community. And I just want to put out there are a lot of good grant opportunities out there. I just listed some that are actually active now. And I know in the future, I know the township's got a lot of stuff going on with grant programs and so on and other commitments. But again, these are rolling opportunities that come up typically every year, every other year. So we'd be happy to try to help the township maybe move forward with some of those opportunities. The last thing I would just, in wrapping this up, is we'd like to hope that the township could take this plan and maybe add it on to your comp plan in the future or other planning documents that would be involved, maybe the Parks and Rec plans, any kind of comprehensive plans for planning purposes in the future. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. And for the board's knowledge as well, we are going to be asking you next week to pass a resolution approving this plan, as it was funded through, this plan was funded from grant funding. And the match for that grant was split from all the municipalities that worked together on the project. It's been a really successful partnership that we did. And Michael Baker and Chris specifically made it a wonderful experience. So thank you, Chris, for the good job. And I know a lot of residents, our residents had concerns about this trail in the area that it would go behind Gosling. And in reviewing it, we decided to leave that section of the trail out for now. The connections that would be made on that end of the trail would be made to like almost a trail to nowhere because the trails that would connect to in Worcester are not built yet. So we wanted to focus on a section where we could connect to things that are actually currently there, like the Dodsworth Run and Stony Creek Park, which once you get to Stony Creek Park, there's also the whole Lansdale sidewalk network and trail network. That's another great connection. So also residents are not a huge fan. Some of the residents that live in that area of the section of the trail that connects to Worcester. And because there's not something there, we decided for now, we have plenty of work ahead of us for these two sections. Let's focus here. And then in the future, which might be like 10 years from now, if people want to focus on another section, we can do that. But for now, this is where we focused.
And then what will the next steps be after we approve this, if we approve it?
If you approve the resolution, we'll close out the TCDI grant, which paid for this program. And I'll probably ask Chris to write a grant for the one that has zero match, which I'm forgetting is a DCNR.
I think it's one of the DCD
It's
ones.
one of the DC.
Yeah.
So right now there is a grant opportunity for trails that has zero match. So we don't want to let that slide by. So I'll probably ask Chris to get started on that in a few, I think it's due in July. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
And as staff,
opportunity.
staff and probably with Commissioner McNaney and you, Commissioner Hull, just do a little subcommittee to talk about which makes more sense to start with. And a big part of that would start looking at like what type of easements we would need and things like that.
Okay.
So.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Should we ask them to come to the podium? and
Chris, you
speak?
can
Because no
feel
one's
free
gonna
to
be
come
able
up
to
to
hear them
this
virtually.
microphone. If you would like to, if you can make your way through to over here, those mics will work for you to answer. Or, yeah, there you go.
There we
And then
go.
the residents can come up to the,
Podium.
there we go.
Perfect, perfect. If you would just, when you come up to ask a question, if you would just mind saying your name and your address like we always do.
Hi, I'm Judy Vose. I live at 619 Whitaker Place. And I wanted to ask if the study included, um, what's the word? Balancing the wishes of the residents that want it versus the wishes of the residents that are opposed to it. Was there a balance? Was it quantified and determined that, was that taken into account?
The answer is yes. Part of the study was a online survey to see, how much level of support there was for it. From the response we had in that survey, I think more than 80% of the folks that responded were supportive of it. So that, gave the municipalities the indication, okay, that, 80% of the folks really want to see something move forward. That is something that we take into account, and part of what we do is we try to work with individual property owners to understand what their concerns are. We understand a lot of people have, privacy concerns, security concerns, they don't want, they have lots of different concerns. You never really know what people's concerns are until you start talking to them. So a lot of times we sit down with folks and try to understand those concerns and try to address them. Or maybe just look at different locations for the trail that might be better for the community.
Well, you led into my follow-up question, which is for that 20% that is against it, was there an opportunity, or did the study or the township take the opportunity to educate those residents that are opposed to it? And I'll just give you a little brief history. I think it was about 4 years ago, might have been at the start of a master plan phase. There was an open house here.
Or a
And I-
comprehensive plan, maybe.
What did you
For
say?
our comprehensive plan that we were
Yes,
working on
I
for
think
3
that
years.
might
Yeah.
be what it was.
Yeah.
There were representatives from Montgomery County here, and they are focused on being able to help educate. And one of the things that they were offering to do was to educate people on the value that trails bring to the residents environmentally. They also bring value for actual increased value on the real estate. These are all really good things that are helpful for the, to counter opposition. The other is the perceived concept of crime coming to the area versus the actual. And that is a big, so did the township and/or the study take the opportunity to educate those people in opposition?
Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to pipe in with the answer. Thank you for these questions. They're great questions, and they're exactly what is meant to be done during a feasibility study, and we did. So at these events like the Fall Fest and the open house that we had, that's exactly what we did at those events. As I mentioned, there were a significant amount of residents on Gosling where this considered portion of the trail would have gone directly behind their homes. We've spoken to those, I personally have spoken to a lot of those residents many times about some of those things. The next step in that line of education is now that the feasibility study is complete, anyone whose property that would be close to either of those alignments, we will have individual meetings with them. We didn't do that yet because the study was so broad, it was such a large corridor. We didn't really have it nailed down to like actual property owners that would be affected, but that will definitely be part of the next steps.
It feels like a shame that we are really losing time here. I heard you mention maybe 10 years down the road, maybe 15. And frankly, this is 15 years behind the original, first time
Yeah.
Upper Gwinnett considered trails. So you would be talking 30 years down the road total. And it seems like we had the funding, we had all of this in place, and to lose sight of the fact that greater success could have been had, or I don't even want to give up on it yet, but I know there's only 1 week left till your resolution.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the section of trail that we removed from the study area by Gosling? Okay.
Yes, I am. And in fact, it feels to me that one of the arguments of saying that it's not being connected to any existing trails is not a really progressive way of looking at things. And a lot of the circuits, the greater circuit, would not have been created had other people taken that point of view. Well, we just don't have something to connect to. A good example would be Hatfield Borough that built only a 0.5 mile stretch. They did it out of the goodness of the future, and yet they waited very patiently for it to be connected.
They're still waiting for our connections. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I don't want you to think that I'm saying 10 years because it takes a lot of time to be able to fund $3.2 million worth of improvements through the grant rounds. Like, we do it in a piecemeal approach so that it's cost effective, not because we don't want to do it. And there would need to be a lot of time, maybe even 10 years of time, to convince the majority of the residents in that Gosling neighborhood that they would be interested in having this trail behind them. I know that from meeting with them. There's a couple people that are into it in that neighborhood, but generally it's a big resident opposition, and when we have 2.3 miles that we can build that doesn't have large resident opposition, we like to start with the success, because in the future, when we come back to it, there's going to be a trail built that people are going to want to connect to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Beth Miller, and I live at 405 West Prospect. My question had to do with PICO and what it is that's going on with PICO that's caused them to be more reticent about easements.
Thank you, Nathan.
Let me take that one. Yeah, as you know, like the power line trail in like Horsham area, that's been very successful, and that's been working its way up, and other communities as well have been able to build in PICO's property. I don't know if they had a change of leadership or change of policy, but they actually came out with written change saying we're kind of taking a step back from letting folks build in our right of ways, because we have concerns for their ability to expand in the future and do that in a safe way. And then also they had some concerns, again, about safety of trails being in their corridors. So I think they sort of put a pause on planning of trails within their property. But fortunately for us, they've actually sort of said, okay, we're going to start meeting with communities sort of one by one on a case-by-case basis to understand what you're trying to do and see if we can work with communities sort of each corridor at a time. So I think the door's not closed. They just sort of closed it temporarily. So we're actually meeting with PICO in a couple weeks to talk about potential trails within the PICO corridor within Upper Gwinnett. I hope that answered the question.
We do have another feasibility study for the Pico Green Region Trail that we're working on at the same time as the Liberty Bell Trail. So we are working on all of the potential trail studies that we have. And hopefully after this meeting in April, we'll have more positive things to report, because certainly that trail will be much easier to build if Pico does give us their approvals.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Come on up.
Hi, Mike Felmuth, 112 Cardinal Way. And first off, I like to state, maybe it's overkill, but when Sandra talks about not having the trail go behind Gosling, we're hoping that considers Cardinal Way too.
It does. I'm sorry. I just spoke to more Gosling residents than Cardinal, but you're safe too, Mike.
It's well, thank you. It's more than just that. It's the safety, and I've left a list with Commissioner Liz and Parks and Rec Director Carol of the safety of both the travelers on the trail and the drivers on North Wales Road, and other safety issues, which I believe are paramount. And anyhow, Liz and Carol have that list if you want to disseminate that. I've read this brief. I'm not sure the question is, let me fill in a little bit. I've read this, and it obviously is going north from Parkside Place. And I noticed a lot of places where it crosses roads and railroads that there's stop signs for the car traffic. I didn't see in the report anywhere where it has stop signs for the pedestrian or the bicycle. And I believe that's important. In all the years I've been driving, I've noticed that some bicyclists, not all, but some bicyclists don't adhere to the rules of traffic law, even though they are considered a vehicle and they have to abide by the rules of a vehicle, or else they just ignore it. But anyhow, for the safety of these people, of everybody, when they cross a high-density used road or a high-speed road or the railroad tracks, I believe there should be a sign at the minimum of stop for the travelers on the path. And maybe a better way would be to have a sign that says bicyclists need to dismount. And there's a precedent for that. There's a Doylestown Trail that runs just south of Del Valle University.
Chris designed that trail, and
Thank
I
you.
wrote the grant for it. I'm
Thank
dead
you.
serious. We worked on it together in Doylestown Township. Yeah.
So where Lower State Road and New Britain Road crosses and the R5 Railroad, there's a big sign right there saying bicyclists have to dismount or must dismount. I forget the exact verbiage. I think those signs should be in this plan, and I didn't see it in these plans. So are you going to put them in these plans?
Yes, we'll put in the proper signage when we get to the engineering, the detailed engineering. This was sort of a high-level 10,000-foot planning study to try to plan out where it would actually go. But yeah, when we go into the details in the future, we'd absolutely look at that type of signage.
And even I just want to take a moment, even the route, if we're in final, when we're in final design, not if, things like that will come up as well, like the rail crossings, the roadway crossings. And if we have to make a change to the alignment, that could still happen depending on, the topography, anything. That this is really conceptual now. It'll get a lot more specific, and we'll keep the public informed all along the way.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Is this for comments or just questions?
Either. Related to the trail, to the Liberty Trail, yes.
William Jackson, 644 Park Road. In regard to the last caller, I am all for bike safety. I bike on the roads, and I've seen plenty of bikers who don't conform with the rules of the road. But I would say more often than not, it's me looking out for the drivers, exceeding the speed limits on our local roads, distracted driving, even with the crossing up on Hancock, because I do ride the Liberty Bell Trail. There's a button there to signal that you're crossing the road, and I'd say at least 50% of the time the cars don't bother to stop. They just proceed on through. So I'm all for safety for everybody. But certainly to me, it's a bit lopsided against the bicyclists in most cases. I would say I definitely support this plan. I appreciate the time that the organizers of the events took to set it up and allow for the public input. I would say that I am not against Dickerson Road, but from a taxpayer utility standpoint, we currently lack sidewalks on Church Road between Sumney and Wissahickon or Pembroke Parkway, just like we lack unbroken sidewalks on Broad Street between Sumney and Allentown. And I run up through there, and I feel sometimes I'm taking my life into my own hands when I do it, but I do it. I've seen plenty of people who walk that way coming back, probably from either Lansdale because of jobs, because of school, or from the train station. And I really feel, even if the trail doesn't follow Church Road, lack of sidewalks through that stretch really needs to be addressed as a separate initiative. But from a taxpayer standpoint, I'd like to kill two birds with one stone and put it up the right side of Church Road. I'm a member of Wissahickon Trails. I like Dodsworth. It's a underappreciated gem that we have here in the township, but I don't need to ride by it every time I want to go into Lansdale, nor do the people coming back and forth from the train station need to walk by it. And we certainly can sign well for it at both ends of Dickerson to direct people to it better than we do now. So I would just say that I look forward to having the trail as a backbone not only for recreation, but for transportation. And so I'd like to just be sure we take that into account. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Dominic Vestori. I'm at 436 Lansdale Ave. I'm a resident in favor of these plans for construction and extension of these walking and biking trails. I use the Wissahickon, Penland, Green Ribbon, the Power Line trails, the Lower Gwynedd trails to get to work every day. I go to the shops in Lansdale and I spend money there using these trails. Liberty Bell Trail for one, I go right there. I also use Liberty Bell Trail right now to go meet up with my local cycling club every Monday and Thursdays, as well as get backyard beans. I'm sure everyone goes there. But yeah, I just love these trails, and I think this is a great option to just extend this Liberty Bell Trail. And it's really great because it's important for our community to extend these trails in general for safety for non-motorists, certainly. We're definitely out there in our sleeves. We're not protected in a metal box. A little kid was actually just hit on the 18th in Skippick Pike. If we had something like this, maybe that child wouldn't have been on Skippick Pike. And that was actually at a crosswalk with flashing signs. So they don't work that well, I guess, just those. But overall, this would definitely improve the networks. It would bring commerce to the communities. It would give people an option other than driving in cars because they wouldn't have to worry about parking when they get to there. They could ride their bike to Lansdale, come here, come to North Wales, go to the Bagel Barrel or go to the Everything Bagel and all those different shops. And it'll just overall improve the safety and health of our residents. Lastly, I would like to mention that if it's possibility to get funding, I work at Janssen Pharmaceutical and I know they're like huge to support this kind of stuff. We have a cycling club and all that. So I don't know, maybe just an idea for funding there as well.
Will you check with them and let us know? Because we'll take any money that anyone wants to give us
Yeah,
to pay
them
for.
them and Merck. I'll talk to someone. I have a lot of friends there, so I'll see who I can talk to. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for putting this together, Chris. I think I spoke with you like a couple years ago too.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to me.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, come on up.
Hi, thank you. I'm actually not a resident. My name is Lou Savastani. I am the chair of Bike Montgomery County, the county affiliate for the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. And thank you so much for the time and for putting this all together and for being circuit trail advocates in this township. I probably don't need to tell you the importance of connecting the circuit. The goal is for 800 miles of circuit, but the hardest part is getting all the pieces connected together. Not just for recreation, but for transportation as well, and for the safety of people walking and cycling. So I have two quick stories to tell. The first is what got me involved in advocacy for this. Is I was going from the Chester Valley Trail to the Schuylkill River Trail on my bike. And those two aren't quite connected yet. They will be soon. But in order to get there, I had to use roads. Someone driving a pickup truck made a left turn right through me.
Oh.
I have 7 broken bones, 5 surgeries, a hip replacement, a year in a wheelchair.
Wow.
I'm okay now. I'm back on my bike. I'm back at it. But those are the types of things that we can save by connecting the trails rather than having people have to go out onto the roads in order to do to make those connections. So the other story that I want to tell real quick is about the community opposition, and I get it. I know change is difficult. People have concerns and worries, but I live in Lower Merion Township. And we had a similar situation when we built the Kinwood Heritage Trail, which now connects to the Schuylkill River Trail and is extremely popular. If you want to come by sometime on a nice Saturday or Sunday, you'll see it's filled with people and families and people recreation. And then on a Monday morning, people will be commuting into Manayunk or into Conshohocken from there. But the real opposition to it was that it went right behind people's houses, and people were worried about it. Unfortunately, the fortunate thing is that they actually got it through. A lot of the people that were so against this started building gates and their back fences and paths out to the trail because they went from being so against it. And as soon as it was in, now they love it and they're advocates. I would be more than happy to put you in touch with our Director of Building and Planning, Chris Leswing, or some local residents who can walk you through how much they love it. Their home values went up. It is one of the most desirable places in the township to live now because of your quick access to the Kinwood Heritage Trail. So that's what I came here to say. I thank you for your time. And if you have any, if I can help with anything, please let me know.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
I want to mention too, in my career in the past 15 years in local government, I've been working on trail projects since day one. And we have a lot of trail to build in Upper Gwinnett. What our earlier commenters said was true. We have plenty of opportunity ahead of us. And if we focus on this and the Pico Green Region Trail and get all of that built, if I'm still manager, I promise we will revisit the last section of trail, which I hope I still will be manager here then. But there's just so much ahead of us. And I think for those in the room, the Pico Power Line Trail will connect to the 202 Parkway Trail, which is such an important connection for us. So we have so many opportunities ahead. It's a very exciting time for Upper Gwinnett and for the commissioners and the residents because these kind of connections really do transform communities. I'm totally bought into it, and I think the board is too, and they've shown that buy-in by funding these studies and continuing to look for grants that fund these studies. So we'll keep working on it.
And if I could just add, Sarah Priebus, our Parks and Rec Director, is here with us tonight, listening, taking good notes on everything. You would probably get some good information from some of our speakers. And yep, that's what I thought. I saw you taking notes back there. So thank you, Sarah, for being here.
Anybody else? Thank you, Chris.
Coming tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight about this. We appreciate it. We appreciate your feedback. Okay, moving on. Lauren, I'm going to turn it over to you about the announcement of our executive sessions.
Thank you, President Hull. The board did meet in executive session on March 28th to discuss a matter of potential litigation, and the board met in executive session earlier this evening to discuss matters of potential litigation.
Thank you. Megan, do we have a registry for the public comments?
Anyone who's a regular, we're lost without Deanna. She's
lost
usually
without
here, but
Deanna.
she's at a class. Oh, great. Thanks, Van.
Thanks,
Can you bring it
Van.
up to Denise, please? Thank you.
She usually swoops it up, I think. Thank you. Okay, moving on to public comment. If you didn't register, I will ask at the end if there's anyone else who'd like to make a public comment. Please respect our 5-minute rule and please practice decorum. First up, we have Bill Jackson. Did you already say what you wanted to say, or did you have something else you wanted to share?
Just one more comment in
Okay.
support of sidewalks. I read the segment that I think was in the agenda or the last agenda and the reply from SEPTA and about the I
Yeah,
forget
the
what
fee
it was
in lieu of
called.
sidewalks. Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
but
this.
Yeah, I would just say
first item.
I would be glad if you never approved an exemption from putting in a sidewalk in the township. I think alternates to cars, doesn't matter if it's a person walking, strolling, biking, or whatever. So just advocating for sidewalks whenever possible.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, how did you get here tonight? Did you ride?
I didn't want to sound like a crazy person.
Yeah.
I
Did you?
helmet in the crowd.
All right, cool. Just wondering.
Next up, we have David Kiwan. I'm sorry, I
Oh, that's okay.
messed up your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Kenyon, K-I-N-I-O-N.
Thank you.
And I live at 1000 South Broad Street. You know, I've been noticing around here that there's a building going on, and it seems like there's a lot of high-density housing being proposed and being built. Who came to the conclusion that we need more high-density housing in the township? That would be my first question. And exactly how and who came to these growth determinations for the township? So, you know, I've been living in Lansdale in this township for, you know, most of my life. And I was actually born at that hospital the doctor founded or whatever in Lansdale. You know, and these high density housing, I really would rather not have it look like, you know, Norristown or up King of Prussia, which is nice down there, but it's high density. So, you know, I think building better homes as opposed to, you know, high density, lower value homes would be better for the tax base. And as far as the trail goes, I'm definitely for the trail because, yeah, I've almost hit a lot of bicyclers out there, and they ride in the middle of the road, really, is what they do. And my question about the trail is, would it be on all public property or PICO property for the trail? Or would you have to negotiate with homeowners to take part of their property for the trail? So would that issue come up with a homeowner if they don't want to give up part of their backyard? Are you going to condemn that part of the yard to take the property? That's a very good possibility on this, which way you go with the trail. And again, you know, there's again, back to the high density housing, there's a lot of high density housing, affordable housing, the Willowwick Apartments, Pembroke Gardens, Village at Gwinnett. You know, there's a lot of them. One right down there. I worked at one right down there. I just feel that the township is pushing this high density housing, and then other parts of the township, they would want to build a park because people will be screaming for a park because the whole township's crowded out. And that's my opinion and my questions.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Next up, we have Tom Borneman.
Hello.
Hi.
Tom Borneman, 722 Green Street, Upper Gwynedd, Lansdale mailing address. Last month's meeting, I asked about the Pembroke Parkway
Yes.
proposal and if there was a traffic study done, and I'm pretty sure I was told there was, but after going back and reviewing the 2040 plan, I noticed that there wasn't one done.
There was not a traffic study done yet for that. We're still in the preliminary phase of that. That's brand new.
Okay, well, last meeting, I asked about the density of the Pembroke Parkway proposal.
Mhm.
And I believe Commissioner Hall, you told me that you were basing it, it was based on the same density, but you never told me what that same density was. I was wondering if were you comparing it to the density across the street?
No, I was speaking to what it was zoned for, density-wise.
But you're going to you're in the process of changing the zoning.
True. True. We are talking about changing the zoning for that. That's true. But it's complying with the zoning requirements that we have in Upper Gwynedd Township. It would not be a denser area than any of the zoning that we already have. Is that correct, Van? And it follows the ordinances that we have established.
Is what the DOD presently allows, and if that would move forward, the density that's contemplated would not be greater.
Okay.
It would be that or 11 units an acre or less.
It wouldn't be denser than anywhere else in our township.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Juan Bose, or did I ruin that first name? Bose is the last name, V-O-S-E?
Oh, Judy.
Oh, Judy. I'm sorry. I totally, sorry, Judy. Did you have anything else, or that was all about got it. Thank you. Michael Felmuth? What? That's not my bad. eyesight.
Mike Thelmuth, 112 Cardinal Way. I just wanted to add to the trail comments I made earlier. The concept of the trail going north from Parkside is good. I support that. The safety issues are for people's safety. That's why I brought it up and mentioned it. Nobody wants to see accidents or anything like that. But going through north, I read that plan fairly well and believe that it's a good idea.
Right? Thank you. Next up, we have Lou Savastani. You already spoke. Lou, was that?
He's the guy that's from over here.
Oh, he's the one who already left. Okay, great. And Dominic, did you? All right, great, wonderful. So would anyone else who did not register, who perhaps came in towards the end of the beginning, like to make a public comment? No? Okay, moving on. I am finally, Sandra, going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. That was fun. A couple presentations to kick us off. And now I'm
Yes.
going to go through mostly what will be happening next week. So the first item is a public hearing regarding the sidewalks. This will be contemplated next week, but basically the gist of it is we'd like to have an opportunity within our saldo in the case that a developer is not going to provide sidewalks, which doesn't happen very often. And I can't remember a time that it's happened recently with this board. There would be an ability for us to collect a fee, and then the purpose of that fee would be for us to install sidewalks or trails in other parts of the community or as close to that location as possible. So that is the public hearing, which will be heard next week and has been advertised. And as quickly as I get the mic, I have to give it to Mr. Van Rieker, which I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, item 12, which is planning and zoning. Well, that seems loud. Some of these you've seen before. I won't rush, but I don't want to repeat items that you've heard before, such as, number one is Wheatley Walk. It's been on your agenda now for perhaps a number of years. It is in the final approval process. Demolition has been complete. As soon as we issue the permit for the first townhouse, as I indicated to you last time, it'll come off this sheet and go into the activity report that we prepare. So there, we figured out what the addresses ought to be, and I think we're getting close to issuing permits for that. It would be nice to see that start to move forward. Are there questions on that one? Next is the zoning map amendment, 375 Morris Road. For those of you that haven't been here before, it's a proposal of about a little over 5 acres of land. We call it the Axe Corporate Office Complex. The request is that it be rezoned from LI to Limited Industrial to IN Institutional. The applicant is the MCIU. The intermediate unit, their proposal would be to provide for, in effect, education for mostly youth and students that have needs. And that has been before the Planning Commission now for 3 months. It will be heard again in 2 days. And my expectation is that the Planning Commission is likely to make a recommendation. Not sure, but I think they're at that point. I know you've heard about that one before. Are there questions about that?
Bill?
Does that include residences or just educational classrooms?
So the building itself would not change if you know the building, and it's not for residences. It would be for educational purposes only, and partly to continue the office use. Part office, part educational classroom. And I should hasten to add, those of you that haven't been to the Planning Commission, no land development is proposed. There'll be internal fit outs that would change if the board moves forward with it, but there would be not much of an external change at all to the property, with the exception of a outside play area. Next, 1500 Pembroke Parkway. This is on the agenda. It is, staff has it. We're looking at it. We're deciding how and if it should proceed. A draft ordinance will be presented to our Plan Review Committee next week. The idea is that we had mentioned previously that it is consistent, the idea of the proposal is consistent with the recently adopted comprehensive plan. We'll see how the details work out as to an ordinance. The idea is that it would emulate, not exactly, but be similar to the current TOD district that we have on the books. Next, zoning hearing. So 621 West Prospect, ZHB 2202. I won't go through the details. That was withdrawn by the applicant. So there'll be no future hearings on that. That was the accessory use question. They've decided not to proceed with that application. 13 CHP 2203, which is 1346 East Prospect Sanctuary UMC Church. They are in for variances for a sign. I should hasten to add that LED is permitted. It's authorized under the code. Their variances are dealing with the size of the sign and a request for flip rate. And the commissioners had taken a position that they've authorized the solicitor's office to appear to monitor that proposal, and I think basically to oppose the request to monitor the flip rate. That is the rapidity of change to a, if it's approved, to a electronic message. That was continued from last month to the next zoning hearing board, which is April 26th. 110 Weber's shed variance, 2 front yards, a corner property. That was approved by the zoning hearing board last month. 725 Shearer, ZHB 2205. Difficult variance was well over 2 hours of testimony. Zoning hearing board, upon hearing the details, elected to deny that application. It was to construct a separate in-law suite, a related party building, rather than have it attached or at least nearby the primary dwelling. So that was denied. A formal written decision will be implemented by the zoning hearing board in the next 2 weeks. And then finally, a new application, which is 722 Pineview Drive, CHB 2206, just came in. I can tell you it's not on here. Deanna didn't have time to add it. That will be heard April 26th, next zoning hearing of this month. And that is to a dimensional variance for a porch roof, fairly non-consequential, and a request for a separate dwelling unit to be attached to, but outside the existing envelope of the existing dwelling unit. So it's an R1 district, it's a large lot. This particular proposal does not propose any separate cooking facilities. And they've indicated that in the application. It's for a present family member. So that will be considered also by the zoning hearing board at the end of the month. We okay? Questions on any of these? Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right,
Owen,
and I'll
you're
give a quick update. Owen Hine with Remington Vernick, sitting in for Isaac Kessler tonight. So I'll give you a quick update on the road program for the township. We have bid opening scheduled for April 14th, and we expect to have a recommendation to award the project at the April 19th business meeting. As we've done in the past, we will have the contract specify to have all the work completed by the end of August and the start of the next school year. Also would like to make people aware that we are doing field survey for various reasons throughout the township this time of year. So that includes areas of streams to assess and identify blockages that can be cleared, as well as areas for specific projects like Haynes Run near the wastewater treatment plant and Sumney Town Pike bridge replacement. We will continue to coordinate and notify nearby residents to the best of our ability, and just to make them aware that we're doing this work in the early stages of these projects. you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving along in the agenda, item 14, staff department reports will be included for the consent agenda. I also want to note for the record that Commissioner Carter came in a long time ago, but I don't know how long ago. So just for Deanna, for the record, you are here and present. Also, items 15 and 16, which are meeting minutes, will be added to the consent agenda for next week. Next up, we have authorization for enrollment in the Plight PFM procurement card program. So you have a memo in your packet. And Nate, let me know if you want to talk on this or if you want me to just take we didn't talk about it ahead of time, but you look ready. I just like to put people on the spot. Megan does not like when I do this, but Nate looks cool as a cucumber, so let's see. Thanks. I don't want to talk all about your great idea, which I think is such a great idea. You get credit for this one.
All right, so good evening. So what you see on the agenda packet tonight is a brief overview of the Plight PFM purchase program. This is designed specifically with municipalities in mind. It allows us to pay for all of our expenses for any of those that will allow for card payment. After we hit a certain milestone, 1% of those proceeds that expenses are returned back to the township. This allows for an additional form of revenue for the township, unbudgeted funds, which we could secure back to or give back to the general fund to help offset some of the expenses throughout the year. I've seen this be successful in 2 other townships that I've taken it to, and I'd like it to bring it here to Upper Gwinnett. They do a terrific job of coming in, sitting down with the commissioners, as well as the township manager and the finance director to help us develop protocols and put it in place. I've seen this be specifically useful, especially during bad weather events that happen. It allows for us to deploy cards out immediately to, say, the police department, public works department, and we can monitor everything that's being purchased on those cards. It'll fall within all of our requirements and all of our ordinances that say what we can purchase, how we can purchase, and make sure it follows those approval levels. One other thing that it does for us that is extremely well that we don't see this happening with the other cards that are offered to townships is that it keeps our tax exemption in mind. So if any of our employees do go to use this card, we are not going after the vendors to say, hey, we're tax exempt. They will file that form for us. They go back to the state to say this money needs to be returned back to this township, and we get quarterly checks based off that as well. So this is a great safeguard feature. They do offer 24/7, so each card is linked to an employee, and they are required to have a phone number to reach you. If there's any suspicious activity, they freeze the card immediately, contact the employee, and contact the department head to let them know, is this authorized? Did you mean to do this? They'll cancel the card and redeploy immediately. The township holds no expense. So when we go to put in for something and say, hey, we did not purchase this, those funds are immediately credited back to the township.
Great. Nate, thank you so much. I want to point out that some of the accounting standards that we currently utilize, like correctly identifying which funds the money should be coming out of, we can specify that per employee, right? So say there's a snow emergency, we can say like purchases are only allowed for salt or these vendors for this budget line, whatever it may be. And you can cap each individual employee's spending per day, you can change it. It's all available to you in the user portal.
Correct. It's all live. So we can limit it to by vendor. We can limit it by geolocation. We can limit it by a few other things, but also we have live data that tells us, okay, these are the spending limits. So say we do have a flood event. We say, you know what? We want to limit this to no more than $100 per police officer. We want to limit to whatever per public works employee. And we get a call saying, hey, no, this is going past this point. We need the specific person. We have live data that goes in and we're able to go in and adjust those balances as needed. And we're not giving certain constraints like with other cards where, okay, now we have to go reach out to our account manager or other things of that nature. We can set as Township Manager Dell said, as long as it follows our requirements, and I can say, okay, I can put my approval on it, or if it goes past a certain dollar threshold, it would go to the chair of the board to say, hey, this balance needs to be pushed beyond this limit. Do we have your authorization to do it? And it's done immediately. Everything's live.
Hey, about how much were you able to recover for former municipalities that you worked in through this program?
The smallest check I received back was around $13,000.
Wow.
So it's like, we can all understand cash back, like your cash back.
The cash
I
back
have a
is great.
Costco card and I get like $300, you know, for Costco. So it's very similar to that, just for the municipality.
Correct. It's specific for the municipality. As I said, the thing I like best about this, it's a centralized purchasing process. It integrates well with our systems. And as I said, they come in, they help you, they assist you with it. We even get reports back that state, you know, who were our biggest users of the card. It allows for every once in a while, what they'll do is they'll come in when they do to go to present the check. It's pretty cool. They can bring a big check in and they, you know, wave it, and the employees get excited about it. But at the end of the day, it centralizes that purchasing. And the only other aspect, as I said, it increases efficiency within the department. The last township that I brought it in, we went from doing, the average was 85 checks a week. By the time we had fully implemented this program and we're taking full advantage of it, we were down to cutting less than 30 checks a month. So it really does pay in different ways, but it really does increase the security from my standpoint of making sure that we're purchasing the right things, we're in the right places, and the reports that come back are phenomenal.
Great.
All right.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Thanks, Nate. Anyone on the board have any questions about that program? No?
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
You're always finding us money every time you come to the meeting, so we like that.
that's why we picked Nate. Yes. I didn't know he was going to be so good at finding money out of nothing, but he really is.
We should have a meeting every day then.
Sprinkle us 10,000 every day, Nate. That's the only expectation we have. Not high expectations. So that will be up for a decision at the next meeting. And it will not be on the consent agenda, but the next item, which is a proclamation declaring April 30th, not April 29th, we'll change that for next week, as Arbor Day in Upper Gwynedd Township. If you haven't heard, we are selling awesome native trees. My personal favorite, the Eastern Redbud. I think we still have some available, right, Megan? So the EAC is selling them at a great rate to the residents, and you can come to Parkside Place, I think between 9 and noon on the 30th to pick up your tree. You do have to order them in advance on our website, but it's an awesome program as we work towards becoming a Tree City USA, which we are working on with the EAC, Planning Commission, and staff. Next up in Commissioner Carter's section on public safety, we will have another resolution, proclamation declaring again another date change, May 15th through 21st as Police Week in Upper Gwynedd Township. This year, we are determined to celebrate all of our departmental weeks on the right week. So we're kicking it off. We had the library, I think, last meeting or a meeting before. And so at this today, you'll have this one as well as codes and public works to consider, but this is good for the consent agenda as well. Okay. Actually, I have a lot of C's on my paper. There's going to be a lot of consent agenda items. In Commissioner Damsker's section, we have approval of an escrow release to Green Tree Contracting for item 20, and I'd like to put that on the consent agenda, as well as the escrow release for the shops at Upper Gwinnett. Ooh, and I just found a typo on that. Just for the record, it says like money sign 38, and I don't think that's correct. So I think it's 138, or do you know, Megan?
It
I
is
always
38.
looked at, 38, thanks, Ellen. I've looked at these 10 times, and of course I notice it when I'm in the public meeting. So that will also go on the consent agenda, and we'll correct that. As well as next up, this is Megan's item number 22, so I will turn it over to Assistant Township Manager Megan Weaver.
So from time to time, we will look at our fee schedule. We want to make sure that we are, what we're incurring in expenses is being covered by the fee. So for the past several months, we've been looking at some of our fees and then what we've been expending as a township, and we just want to make sure that those are being covered. We did notice that there are several fees where we are losing a little bit of money, so we do need to increase our fees just to make sure that our expenses are covered. So in the memo, I did outline each section in which we're recommending to be updated. And we did do this in consultation with all of the department heads. We also looked at some of the surrounding townships just to make sure that our fees were comparable with the other townships as well. One big change, and it's also in the next agenda item as well, is currently for land developments, we will incur the legal and engineering expenses, and then we bill the developer. We're proposing to change this to an escrow model where we would get the money up front, and then any legal and engineering expenses we draw down on that account. That kind of allows us to not have that liability if a developer decides not to pay. We're not out that money because we're able to stop work if their escrow account runs too low. And I think that's all, unless anybody has any.
Forgot to say how many months you've been working on this. It seems like a simple item, but Megan's put hours and hours of work into identifying and analyzing the fees that we put out. She included, how much we're spending with our engineer, our legal, and really made sure that these fees are fair for the residents and developers that may be paying them. So thank you, Megan, for that good work. Does anyone have any questions on this item? I haven't asked for any public questions in a while. Are there any questions? Come on up, please, Mike. Thanks.
Mike Feldman, 12 Cardinal Way. The fees for the comp plan, I was charged $115 to get a printed copy of the comp plan. Is that making a profit, or is that still a loss?
I can address that one. I was going to email you because I talked about it with Sandra. So that $115 is for making copies, colored copies for you. It's 50 cents a page, right? So that's why, yeah, Mike, I agree with you. So we talked about some options moving forward with that. Making it black and white only. So that would cut it down to, I think it was $57. Would that, or, I mean, what do you think? Because I had no idea. I was shocked when you told me that.
I just have to point out that it's available for free online, and you can also print it at home. So it's not like the only way you can get it is that way.
I understand. Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned. Online is just a little difficult.
I know, people like to hold and look at paper, yes.
I agree.
And flip back and forth, different pages. I'd have to take a look at it to see if color is necessary.
It is, I think, personally. Yeah, I believe color is necessary for the comp plan because of all the map pages, which you might have seen.
Well,
And there's a lot of like overlay and delineation of different areas that without color, I think would be tricky. So we're going to look at it internally.
You could also come and read it here.
Thank you.
You can also, just another option, I just want people to know all their options, that you can come in and mark the pages that you want copied, and we would only charge you for those pages, as well as this is the same price that we charge for open records requests. It's consistent. That's our copying fee, 25 cents for black and white, 50 cents for color.
Okay.
And I believe those are consistent with the Office of Open Records.
That's correct. Those are the fees set by the Office of Open Records for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
But I heard that you could take it to Kinko's or somewhere and they can do it a lot cheaper. But that, yeah, Staples, yeah, that they could, I know. Mike, I was trying,
Owen says no, it's expensive. And
is that more expensive?
I've done that sometimes in emergency, and I'm surprised at how much it costs.
I do want to point out that in 2004, the draft from 2004 was $50. So there is a little inflationary cost there since it's been just about 20 years since 2004.
Questions up,
Yeah, but we're going to look at it, Mike. We understand it's expensive.
Thank you.
I'm only telling all these options so that other residents who might be interested know workarounds for it to be cheaper. So.
Do the library, but like sign it out, Mike, and then bring it back. But you want to write in it, right? And you want to put little notes in, yeah.
Post-it notes and tag, all your tags, yeah, we understand. Okay, and that is not included in this fee resolution, but are there any other questions or comments about the fee schedule? Thanks, Megan, for your hard work on that. So that will not be a consent agenda item. Next up is, it's sort of a coordinated item, the establishment of the escrow fee schedule. That is what Megan was speaking of earlier in her presentation. Items 24 and 25 are both MERC waiver requests for work through May of this year through December, and those will go to the consent agenda, as well as the authorization for the township to release the maintenance bond for ColorCon's project in the amount of $65,000 and some change. Are there any questions about any of that? Here comes an exciting week, Codes Week. They're very important around here to keeping order. So we will be declaring May 23rd through 27th as Codes Week. There's actually a whole Codes month, which is, there's only a couple departments, that have a whole month. Park and Rec and Codes, they've got it. So, I don't think there's a township manager week, but I'm going to try to get in on the celebration with everybody else.
You
So
overlap on a lot of them.
yeah. Yeah. We will be also declaring May 15th through 21st as Public Works Week in Upper Gwynedd Township. So May is a big week for month for celebrations of our staff, which we really appreciate. So that is also for the consent agenda. Up next is approval of the advertisement of the intermunicipal bid for heating oil. So this is a project that we take on for the Montgomery County Consortium of Township Managers. We do a lot of group bid projects like our salt, road signs, things like that. Upper Gwynedd volunteered, and Suzanne from our staff has taken over this bid project, which was great. Last year we saved money. Hopefully we'll save money again through the cooperative purchasing, but it'll be set to go out to bid once you guys approve the advertisement. We all know heating oil is outrageous this year, so. Owen spoke earlier about the approval of the bids for the roads program. And we did all talk earlier about the approval of the resolution for the Liberty Bell Trail study. Next up, Commissioner Hull, I have to turn it back to you for an action item based on a grant timing.
Did you want to just talk about that first, or
Sure.
should we ask Sarah to?
Well, she's here. She might
She's
want to get
here.
a chance to talk, since I've called all of the department heads that are here except for the chief up, which I'll think of a reason for the chief before the end of the meeting. We'd like to hear from them.
Really lower this here. Yeah, so we are looking in the next 2 years to do a comp plan for Park and Rec, meaning all 5 of our parks we're going to take a look at and see what trends are in Montgomery and Pennsylvania, and see what we have, what we don't have, what residents want, what they don't want, things like that. So we are right now working with RVE on a grant for this, so we just need a resolution from you guys.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 12-2022, the DCNR grant application for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? David, come on up to the mic.
Yes, David Kenyon, 1000 South Broad Street. What exactly is the master plan? Could you explain that to me?
I can answer that if you'd like. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
Sarah touched on it a little bit, but go ahead. Yeah.
so a master plan takes into account what we have in our parks currently and what we're looking to add. Basically just plans the future for our parks.
I understand. Is there some place I can get a copy of that? Not at $150? I can.
Well, we don't have it yet. We're writing a grant to create it, so it does not exist.
Okay. And
But when it does, it will be just the same as any of our other plans.
It'll be available online and
Free online.
we'll be talking about it a lot.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a couple things to add to this. So when I read through this and prepared to talk about it tonight, I asked Sarah if it could be done like the comp plan with the county. And it can't be done that way because the county doesn't offer that type of program. So we'll be working with finding another group that will be able to help us look at that plan so that it is something that we can really use and looking into the future plans for Upper Gwynedd with our parks. So that's going to be exciting to see, because I was part of the comp plan. Now to see this one, it's going to be exciting to see what they come up. So thank you.
Great. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Back to Sandra.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hull.
Sure.
For the wastewater section of our agenda, we have a payment to Durstein, excuse me, for our RAS pump replacement project. That could go in the consent agenda, right? Yes. Okay, consent agenda. Next up is the authorization for the township manager to execute the addendum to the intermunicipal agreement among Upper Gwynedd Township, Tomenson Township, and Upper Gwynedd Tomenson Municipal Authority regarding the withdrawal of Upper Gwynedd therefrom. Lauren, would you like to speak about this one?
Certainly. We are working with the Townmenson solicitor to finalize the form of this agreement. So this would be subject to final approval from the solicitor's office. Essentially, when this agreement was originally drawn up, there were 2 properties omitted in the list of properties that are, I'm trying to remember if they are staying with Upper Gwinnett or staying with Townmenson. Right, right. So there's 2 properties missing. This is just correcting that error from that, the original agreement. It's also updating the agreement to reflect the fact that it is just now the Townmenson Municipal Authority rather than the Upper Gwinnett Townmenson Municipal Authority. So again, we're just waiting, we're working with the Townmenson solicitor to finalize the terms of this agreement. So we just ask that the approval be subject to final approval from the solicitor's office.
Thank you. And there's no change in cost or anything. It's just a couple of changes. Great. Thanks. For next week, we will have the approval of the resolution for the 2021 pretreatment fees. We do this the year after the pretreatment program exists for our large industrial users of the wastewater treatment plant. And so finance is working on calculating those fees, and you'll have them for your packet next week. It's something we do every year. And next up is another decision item, which Commissioner Hull, I will throw your way since Commissioner Similaro is in here.
Thank you. So this is happening coincidentally next week, and so we want to make the proclamation today because we want to make it official before our next meeting. It just conflicts with the next meeting. So do we have a motion to approve the proclamation declaring April 18th through the 22nd, 2022 as Wastewater Week in Upper Gwinnett Township?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks so much. And the last 2 items will be our open and paid invoices, which will be added to the packet for next week.
Great. Excellent. Judy, you had another comment. Did you want to come to the mic? No one will hear you.
You need to come to the mic so everybody listening can hear that, please.
Let the viewers at home hear your comment.
I just wanted to commend Upper Gwinnett Township, the Board of Commissioners and the managers for managing the wastewater treatment plant so well and knowing that it's keeping our residential rates down while I see Tomenson Township struggling so much with theirs.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great. Did anyone on the board have anything else?
I do.
Oh, please, Commissioner Carter.
Chief Duffy, can you come up?
Oh, see, there is a Chief
Yes,
Duffy.
thank you, Commissioner Carter. Great.
The reason why I was late coming is I was over at the fire department and they were being honored by the men of the revolution.
Yes.
And 2 of Chief Duffy's officers received awards, but they could not make it tonight. So they asked me to make sure, they asked if I could, I told them I was on my way here and if I could mention it.
Oh, very kind.
So Officer John Gill is awarded the Life Saving Award in recognition of saving a human life under emergency conditions on September 11th. If you can recall, they were both honored. So they're receiving the National Society Sons of American Revolution Life Saving Award and Commendation. And also Sergeant
Raymond Roy's is also awarded the Life Saving Award from the National Society of the Sons of American Revolution, and they would like for you to give them these awards.
Thanks, Chief.
That's all.
Great.
Thank you. I promised them I would say something.
That's great. That's wonderful. We can't say enough about that. That was, yes, that was wonderful. Does anyone else have anything? Okay, it was a little bit longer of a meeting for a work session, but we all made it through. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening. Meeting adjourned.